Do you really know just how heavy 24 hours of metal music really is? About the weight of your mobile phone. Download our free andrewhogue.com iPhone and Android apps now. That way, you'll never be far away from us. This is andrewhogue.com, still Australia's only 24/7 metal radio station. Now, most of us are aware of the amount of subgenres that have come about in the metal scene, I reckon, probably in the last 15 years. But I find it very refreshing that this is a band that I believe doesn't need to be put in any of those subgenres. They really do stand alone. They go by the name of Zeal and Ardor. We have the main man. I want to try and get this right. I've been practicing it. Manuel Gagneux.
Fucking nailed it too. Hey.
Of course, based out of Switzerland, also home of two of the greatest heavy metal bands, Celtic Frost and the mighty Coroner. But let's talk to Manuel all about, of course, the up-and-coming third album by Zeal and Ardor. And again, just how refreshing the band's music is in the climate of, quite as I said, a saturated, scene of subgenres and a lot of bands that are just doing the same old stuff. So, boy, what an album. The new record's out very shortly. Self-titled, album number 3. Welcome to andrewhogue.com. Manuel, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, man.
Not a problem. And again, it's a pleasure. And wow, the new record. It's, again, I don't want to put it in a box. It doesn't deserve to be put in a box. It just stands alone. So firstly, before we delve right into it, how do you feel about it? What's your thoughts on it since it's now complete and ready to be released to the masses in a couple of weeks' time?
I'm just stoked to have it out. You know, we've actually had this album done 9 months ago. So we had to like drip feed people as singles, just to appease the gods of the algorithms. And yeah, so I'm just really stoked to have this thing out. There was a couple of times where I got drunk and almost leaked it. So I'm happy to not have that be an option anymore.
Well, I was surprised because I did receive quite a few of the singles last year and there wasn't a mention of the records that are officially coming out. And I thought, is this kind of just a couple of random tracks here and there? Because some bands, have, again, with the amazing way of the changes in the music industry, and rightly so, that it gives bands opportunities to try different things. Some just drop the album randomly unannounced. As I said, some just drip feed singles and kind of just build some kind of excitement as well. But when I found out that there was a new record coming out, of course, super excited. But let's talk a bit about, how you guys come up with the music itself, because like I said earlier on about, not putting it into a category, it really is refreshing. So how do you go into, I guess, the mindset of creating Zeal and Ardor music when it comes to writing new stuff?
I mean, for me, it's all about volume. I get up at 9, go into my room, and I'm there until midnight, just, writing music. That being said, like good 90% of it are shit. So it's all about, volume and output. And whatever like sparks my interest, be it like a vocal line, a riff, I just treat that as a little Lego block and, try to, fit something else that might be interesting or even helpful emotionally to that thing, and then it becomes a weird little Lego song.
And it's just you that's composing everything yourself, rather than sort of sending it to some of the other members of the group. I mean, it's pretty obvious you seem to be the main visionary of the band, but do you sort of get some of their input as well on what you're coming up with in the studio every day?
I'm pretty much a control freak when it comes to writing, so yeah, I'm kind of isolated. But it's like a two-way sword. There's a lose-lose potential here. If I open up the creative part and it's not good, I get really arrogant because I was like, I told you guys it's better when I do it myself. But if I open up the creative process and it turns out to be great, I'm gonna hate myself for not doing it earlier. But right now I'm in this safe space with just two potentially bad outcomes.
Yeah. Now, as we know, we're sort of in a changing situation the last couple of years across the world. It's a pretty generic topic, but it has affected all of us in the way we somewhat have been living. And I know there's only a couple of bands that have done sort of sporadic tours, including yourselves. What has that been like, in that sort of climate for you to sort of get out on the road in the last year or your last 2 years sporadically. I think you did this tour with Mastodon and Opeth.
Yeah, yeah, that was in December. This was like pre-Omicron USA. So it as long as you're vaccinated and have a mask on, it's fine. People didn't really end up wearing that many masks, especially, in Texas and the like. But we just kept to ourselves. And I think, it was kind of naive and potentially even dumb and reckless, but we were just so eager to have the chance to tour again that we couldn't pass it up. Also, Mastodon and Opeth, come on.
God.
Yeah. Yeah, they even played Blackwater Park every night, and it was a good time.
Yeah. And how were you guys received? Because like I said, you're hard to put in a pigeonhole as far as the sort of metal scene goes. And we know there's so many different offshoots and subgenres, but there's just such a different sound that you guys omit within these sort of genres. So what was the response like for you guys playing to their sort of audiences?
You know, both Opeth and Macedon are fairly proggy and also kind of experimental. So since we knew the audience didn't know us, we took it as a chance to try out new songs off this record, and people ended up enjoying it a lot. And yeah, actually, it was kind of invigorating in that regard. It could have gone real bad too, so I'm happy.
And how, I mean, like I said about the whole pigeonhole box, but if someone was to come up to you and say, so Manuel, tell me, how do you just define your music? How do you describe it? What is Zeal and Ardor? What would you actually say to that question?
I guess soulful extreme metal with weird, I don't know, electronic bits, and there's also some violins in there if you give it a good listen. I don't know.
And just, I guess, moving forward into the future, of course, this is album number 3 coming out shortly, but do you see any other ideas that you want to take the band's sound? Because as we know, there's a lot of other bands just now, it's almost, to me, it had a feel like Japanese groups where they just don't care. They throw everything in and that's what they do. Like, and that's when people go, what the hell is this? Even the French band you probably are aware of, Igor, as well. I mean, they're another band where I heard them and just went, what the hell is this? But it's so intriguing, and that's why it's so are there any other sort of influences that you're thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind trying that on the next record, or something that's sort of crept in recently that you might have been listening to that isn't related to the metal genre?
There's a couple of things that spring to mind. I'm just easily bored, and so I guess I have a really short attention span. So I just grab new shiny things and put them in a pot. Um, there's this label called PC Music. They put out interesting stuff. They had an artist called Sophie signed. Sadly, she passed away not too long ago. And Arca, I think she's Argentinian, also makes really cerebral, basically, if Aphex Twin took a lot of Adderall music, that's kind of how it sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll incorporate that.
Now, just on the live front, was it when you get in the studio and you write your music? And again, like I said, most bands today are just afforded the luxury of having home studios. They've just been a complete game changer. But when you're in that space and you're putting that stuff together, do you think about how are we going to do this live, or how is this going to sound live? Do you consider that as well? Even if something that might be so over the top, do you think, well, if I can't do it live, I'm not going to do it? I know bands like Tool go into that approach where if we can't play it live, we're not going to bother trying. Other bands love doing the studio, and then they say, you know what, this is just too complex. We can't do it live if it's got some overlays and things like that. So do you sort of consider that when you're putting stuff together of, would this actually go down live, or could we even play this live?
I don't really think about that too much. I first and foremost want to make the best album I can. And out of experience, I know we'll make it work live anyway. So even if there's like slight cheating or we play it differently, we actually manage to bring it to the stage. But more often than that, live stuff informs what I do in the studio, because I figured they shouted like that once on a live gig, and it could actually work well in this context. So it's like this cross-pollination situation of the nation with the Asian Dub Foundation. Oh, I'm gonna.
Start rhyming. Now, let's talk a bit about the industry, as you know, 20 years ago was completely different. How do you think Zeal and Ardor would have been, responded to, say, 20 years ago when, record labels were selling albums officially, and how do you think the band would have been received, say, 20 years back to compared to how it is now with online streaming and, the benefits of that? How do you think that you'd be, responded to?
I think we would have been treated like a curiosity, which I will acknowledge we still are. Even I would even say like 10 years prior or 10 years later to our debut, I didn't think it would have gone the way it did. There was a lot of luck involved when it comes to timing. Like black metal was like this new edgy thing for a lot of people, and the sort of black music that I bring to the table also was, the flavor of the month. So it could have very well been just something that your one friend once talked about. And you thought, huh, and that was that. So they're nice.
Yeah. Now let's talk a bit about, so you're based in Switzerland, but you're American born. Is that correct? Just so I can understand a bit more about your landscape.
Yeah,
being based out of Switzerland. I mean, does that inspire you in any way? I mean, what is the scene like in Switzerland? Because again, there's not a lot of bands that people can rattle off that are from that country, apart from what I could mention earlier on, the Mighty Coroner and Celtic Frost. But is there a healthy scene there? Is there support for the arts, and do people still support, I guess, to a degree, local artists?
Oh, definitely. There's a huge scene. There's great bands, even great black metal bands right now. There's a band called Graupel. Triptychon is a great one.
Oh yeah.
Paysage d'hiver, very French name, but they were like a 90s, I would say, second wave black metal band. Just gnarly. There's great shit all around, and also there used to be like this hostility towards other bands, and I think that I noticed this thing in the last 5 years where people are more supportive of each other, and just like everyone becomes a fucking hippie, but it's actually great for this.
I think it's totally great. I mean, we've had this thing in Australia for many years, you might have heard, called the tall poppy syndrome, which is, when bands are on the rise, let's pull them back down, and I've noticed over the last, I just said, decade or so, that has shifted because so many Australian bands now are really taking it to the world. You got, Parkway Drive that are just kind of our Metallica in our country, they're just huge.
They're huge everywhere. Yeah.
15 years ago, it just would have been, you're not going to get anywhere kind of thing. So I think, as you said, it is a great shift that's finally happening where artists are finally getting, their just rewards. Our concern here, especially in Australia, is, with the current situation, that the arts seems to be one of the only things that's not heavily supported by governments to keep that alive. Have you gone through the same transition over there with venues and stuff in Switzerland that are struggling? Because Australia, it's happened pretty badly here, and the shit situation, but we feel like we might be seeing light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it's similar here, but I will say that, being the goddamn socialist country that we are, there's a lot of support for artists and even venues, but that doesn't really help, particularly really small, interesting niche venues. It's more, geared towards things that already make money. So I have a lot of friends who just opened clubs not too long ago, and they're really struggling. So I think it's a global phenomenon, sadly.
Let's talk heavy metal. What are your 3 go-to albums in your collection when it comes to getting inspired to write some, Zeal and Ardor music? I mean, just stuff that you grew up with where you're like, yeah, I got to get into that zone. 3 records, what could they be?
I would say Dreamweaver by Golem, Transylvanian Hunger from Dark Throne, and yeah. Hold that grapefruit.
Invisible Oranges. Yeah.
And a third. Fuck. I'm blanking. Hold on. I have something. I really like I will never, you will never be one of us from Nails. It's just raw, stupid anger. And sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. What draws you to the sounds of sort of black metal when it comes to the band's music? Because like I said, there's so many different influences in there. It goes through sort of gospel-y and bluesy, and then it's really dark and dense. So, you know, how did that sort of just become part of the band's, I guess, soundscapes over the years, where you just got to continue to keep in some ravaging grimness?
It's funny because like black metal in particular has like multiple levels. The first one is just, you know, anger and the extremeness of it all, and then there's like this sublayer of really beautiful, solemn, sad melodies that actually go hand in hand with soul music. You know, that's the depressive side, the depressing side of black metal. And
Yeah.
yeah, it actually also really feeds into the other. They really kind of support each other in that regard, because as inclusive and warm as soul feels, there's still like kind of a forlorn feeling to it, and that kind of crosses over to the other genre. Yeah.
Did you see them? Did you end up seeing the movie Lords of Chaos?
I avoided that thing like the pest. Yeah, I did not.
You did not see it? Wow. You should check it out. It's actually, I think after 2 or 3 watches, you kind of get hooked. And
Yeah. Wait,
yeah,
that's a big time investment. It's multiple watches.
oh, I've got that in the collection. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to check it out. I mean, I
Okay.
interviewed the director, and I was surprised that they you know, featured American actors, even though it was all based in Norway, and it literally is the whole landscape of the scene at that time. I was curious, but obviously you wanted to have a bit more of a worldwide sort of appeal. But it's an interesting
director,
watch.
though.
Yeah, he's really
good. He did great shit even prior to that. So
I don't even, a lot of people don't even know that he was actually the drummer from Bathory in the early years. He played on the first demo, so he has some you know,
insight,
grim credentials. But yeah, I'd consider check it out. Put it on the list if you got time.
Okay,
I know
you. I'll give it a spin. Fine.
Guess if you want some comedy, but it's yeah. There are moments where you just go, yeah, this is ridiculous. But I don't know.
But it was ridiculous. It was like it was bored, kind of middle class teens in the suburbs.
Yeah,
we all knew that guy, that edgy guy who still kind of lives with his mom but hates everything. They just, you know, ended up doing that.
Well, I encourage you to, at least if you want to have a laugh one night, just sit down with your friends and check it out. Now, we don't have you for too long, so we can get you to choose one of your favorite songs from shortly, and just something off the back catalog that we can also play to follow up to still one of your favorite tracks from the band's catalog. Manuel.
I guess from the new one we could do Death to the Holy.
Yep.
And from the back catalog, let's go with a deep cut. Trust No One. Yeah.
Alrighty, it's been a pleasure. Let's hear some Zeal and Ardor right here on andrewhogue.com. Thanks for your time, Manuel, and hopefully, you know, the band will make its way to Australia when other bands are somewhat allowed into our prisoner island that is Australia.
We hope we can make it. Yeah. See you soon, hopefully.
All right. Take it easy. All righty.